Cristina, just, quickly, I want to welcome you as our guest speaker today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, well, we're thrilled to have you. And also, I'd like to thank Women in IT Summit and Award Series for sponsoring this podcast. And I just take a moment to share a little bit about the Women in IT Summit. They believe that the lack of diversity in the tech sector is actually a global issue and one that has to be addressed and quickly. The Women in IT Award Summit is organized by Bonhill Group and is hosted by Diversity Q and Information Age, which those are brands of the Bonhill Group. They help raise awareness of this problem, and it is truly a big problem. I've been doing work with them now for the last 3 years, and they're a great organization. They also and most importantly, we still have people entering, they spark conversations that lead to action to close those gender gaps, which is hugely important, while celebrating amazing achievements of the women in technology. And so they're based out of London, and they have a series of global initiatives with events in New York, Toronto, Singapore, Berlin, Bucharest, Dublin, and Silicon Valley. And we're super excited because they will be in Toronto hosting an event with us on October the 20th. And we're super excited that they're going to be there. So we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of our conversation with Cristina. So again, thank you so much, Women in IT Summit, for sponsoring this. And so let me officially introduce our guest today for the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. We have with us Cristina Tahoces. Cristina, again, thank you for coming. Cristina is she is a holistic nutritionist, a TEDx speaker, and owner of the Thrive Nutrition Practice, which is a global online wellness business focused on building physical and mental health resilience to stress. Very timely. Oh my goodness. Prior to becoming a nutritionist, though, Cristina enjoyed a decade-long global career in capital markets. And today she focuses on developing nutritional programs that actually support corporate professionals and entrepreneurs in increasing productivity, reducing sick days, and being more physically and emotionally resilient to stress. In 2017, she shared her nutritional strategy, Sleep, Love, Poop, and I did say poop, on the TEDx stage as part of the TED Women's Global Conference. She graduated with first-class honors from the Edison Institute of Nutrition in Toronto, where she earned her diploma in holistic nutrition. And she holds an MBA from the Schulich School of Business and sits on the board of Mumnit, a not-for-profit dedicated to improving the health and well-being of mothers in Toronto. Her research and thought leadership on postnatal women's health has been published in Thrive Global. Cristina, I know you do lots of, different podcasts, you have different conversations about burnout, mental health. And today, our focus is really on burnout, and burnout has doubled for women in the past year. I mean, it's like, when you think about that, like doubling in the past year, and 1 in 3 women are actually are considering leaving their post as corporate executives or downshifting those careers. And some of the research that I know you and I both have read this from Lean In and the McKinsey Group is that 42% of women say they have been or almost have always been on burnout in the past year in particular. And so lots of emotions are being experienced. One woman was saying that she's crying all the time. She doesn't understand this because it's not her nature. But we're really caught in the middle of all the emotions and feeling like we're sort of on deck for everyone's emotions, right? And so burnout is sort of at its peak for most people. So I think today's conversation is very timely and so important that we start to dive into, how we recognize it, what we do about it. And so let's just jump in. So, thank you again. Let's just start with, what the impact has been on mental health, especially over the past 19 months, and what we're seeing physically manifest, and how people are physically present, but emotionally absent. And so maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this condition of being physically present and emotionally absent, it was actually explored by a clinical psychologist. There's an actual term for it. It's called ambiguous loss. And it's meant to refer to the situation where, we are mourning the loss of someone, for example, dear to us, who is suffering from Alzheimer's, for example, where they are physically present but emotionally absent. And I heard that from Esther Perel. She was on a podcast talking about this concept of ambiguous loss, and I thought, gosh, that is what I'm seeing too in my practice with women in burnout. This condition of being physically here but emotionally absent. And I really can't think of one client who doesn't suffer from this, right? We're all struggling at this point, on the one hand, with this perceived, like, almost requirement to be available all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's on the one hand. And then on the other hand, this we've got this device, this phone that makes that perceived requirement so possible, right? So we have flexibility, but without boundaries, right? So we've all experienced this, right? We're having dinner with our family or with a group of friends, and, suddenly, we're responding to a text or an email that comes through, or our friends are doing that, or, our children are doing that, right? Sometimes. So it's really this, it's endemic right now, this condition of being physically present, but emotionally absent or emotionally distracted, right? And so many of these previous times, which were for human connection and for de-stressing, right, are now kind of invaded by the mobile phone, or by this requirement, or this idea that we have to be available all the time. And really, that means that our nervous system is always on. It's always on standby, right? It's never truly off. We're really always waiting for that next beep or that buzz or that, notification to come through. And that doesn't just take a toll on our mental health, right? There's a lot of data on mental health and, our dependence on our mobile phones and our devices. But it also takes a toll on our physical health as well, because our nervous system is always at the ready, right? It's always in fight or flight. And with COVID, it's in fight or flight all the time, because we're, over the last 2 years, we've lived in this kind of state of fear, right? And so if our nervous system is always on, then that's going to affect how robust our adrenal health is as well. And our adrenal system is responsible for our stress response, right? And for how resilient we are to stress. So really, we can't really talk about solutions to mental health issues and the issue of burnout without really addressing physical well-being as well.
Wow. You said a number of things there that my brain was going, oh yeah, I do that. Oh yeah, I'm definitely, and I catch myself even with the kids. It's like, get your devices off now. Like this is family time. But you're so right. Like that fight or flight, and especially during COVID, I think it's been heightened that much more, because we're thinking about our own well-being, but we're also thinking about our loved ones' well-being and our children's well-being. And we were talking about, just before everybody came on, like my daughter's experiencing all of these anxieties, and it has that physical impact, because she's anxious, but she's feeling it physically in her gut. So, wow. So what do we do? I mean, how do we start to make that shift from being emotionally absent and combining the physical presence and the emotional presence together? So maybe talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah. I think the first thing that I want to say is that in terms of women in burnout, I think the reason why we're seeing such a crisis during COVID is because of that added physical exhaustion that we're all experiencing, right? And we know from that McKinsey and Lean In report that, women are taking on, not just the care for their families, but also tending to their team and to the people that they're responsible for. So women now are just in this state of physical exhaustion from the extra caregiving responsibilities that they've had to undertake. And the thing is that when that happens, right? When that happens, that extra load of like mental and physical stress, as you said, it starts to manifest itself in the body, right? And so right now, women's bodies are literally yelling, right? They're like,
Screaming.
I can't go at this pace any longer. And I don't know what I have to do to tell you to get the message, because I'm already giving you these symptoms of like anxiety and brain fog and insomnia. And I'm giving you like hormonal migraines and indigestion because of all the stress that's getting stuck in the stomach. Your energy is really low, right? And so, we were talking about this before as well, Vicki. Our tendency is to kind of downplay these emotions, right? Like downplay these symptoms until we can't ignore them anymore. And by that time, we're so overwhelmed and so exhausted that like the inner critic inside of us, right? It's just getting louder and louder. And finally, it just says, okay, I'm physically here, but I'm emotionally spent. My life force is gone. I'm bowing out. That's me done.
Yeah.
Right? And so to come back from that, like once you've reached that stage, to come back from that, it's hard, because the reality is that most women who bow out, they're not doing that so that they can go sit on a beach.
Yeah,
right?
no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do it so that they can continue their caregiving responsibilities to their family, to their kids, to their aging parents. They do that so that they can continue to do that without really burning out, like without really just kind of like, being sort of flat out on a bed for 3 months. So it's not like there's a holiday in sight. Okay. But on a day-to-day basis, right? On a day-to-day basis, being emotionally present is easier when you're doing something that helps you release the stress from the body and keep you in flow.
Okay.
So implementing a movement practice that you can commit to, realistically commit to, is a wonderful transitional way to kind of move away from stress and into being emotionally present. Mm-hmm. And I personally work with a wonderful fitness coach who really focuses on intentional movement. And it's helped me tremendously, not just in terms of like, leveling up fitness and whatnot, but really to kind of use that time to just get that stress out, right? Like get it out from the body where it's not causing havoc, right? I like to do things with my hands as well, right? So, drawing something where you're really sort of actively engaging more of your senses. And there's a lot of actual sort of mind-body science to back this. Like when we cook, for example, we engage the higher centers of our brain, right? And that can help us tune into things like gratitude, right? We can turn off the inner critic. And I always find that kind of ironic because I think cooking is kind of the last thing that we associate with something relaxing, but it is a very effective mindfulness practice, as it turns out.
Well, so to validate your point, like if you think about when the pandemic started, like you couldn't go to a grocery store and find flour because people were baking like crazy, right? Not maybe necessarily the best thing to be, to be making cakes and breads for the overall, body composition, but but to your point, it was a release, right?
It was a release. Yeah. It wasn't about, yeah, I mean, obviously you have to eat your baked goods or whatever, but that was, I've got clients who've done that. And it was more about like kneading the bread and using just another part of yourself that you are not tapping into in your workday.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I want to tap into, there was a lot that you said there, which was fantastic. And thank you for that. I think, and I'm curious about this. So when you hit that wall,
yeah,
you said that's when it's hard to pull yourself back. But in a way, when you hit the wall, then you know that you're at burnout.
Yeah.
Right. So what are those little subtleties that sometimes we don't even realize, right? That those are the signals. I mean, I know we talked about some of the bigger things, but what are some of those whispers that happen that are saying to you, Vicki, you're, listen, pay attention. Like this is happening for a reason. Pay attention to it so that we catch it before we hit the full blown burnout.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Oh, yes.
Any?
Loads. Loads. Well, I think this idea of being physically present and emotionally absent is a big one. It is kind of almost how it starts, because burnout by definition is also a state in which we experience extreme disconnection. And so really kind of tapping into that intentionality about how you're present with other people, I think is very important. Stress can manifest itself in both physical and mental health symptoms. For me, they manifested physically first. So they manifested in digestive issues, which started off kind of gently and then became very irritable, especially, when I was under levels of, high stress. And those high level, when your body is experiencing these kind of chronic levels of inflammation, that starts taking a toll elsewhere too. So for example, in my case, it took a toll on immunity, right? So I got sick a lot, colds that then turn into bronchitis or sinusitis, or those colds where like you feel like you're sick all winter long. Like you can't shift that cough.
Never ending cold.
It's like never ending, right?
Yeah.
Or that chronic kind of sinus congestion. And then suddenly one day I was like, oh God, I can't breathe today. Why can't I breathe today? And I started developing these like allergies, like really severe allergies to dust and dust mites, which I'd never had before. And then finally, really only as a kind of last step, did I feel my anxiety levels start to rise.
Okay.
And feel like I really just sort of didn't have a handle on my emotions. And I felt like any kind of little thing would really throw me off. So I really had to guard myself I felt like slowly I was retreating because I was so afraid of confrontation, because any little thing would throw me off. So I kind of like, and the thing is, this happens so gently and so over time, right? It starts with like, a migraine, or it starts with a headache or something. And then, slowly, especially as we age as well, right? And as we enter perimenopause, which, I'm in right now. So, all of these sort of like physical symptoms, if you're not dealing with that first one, they start to kind of add up and go elsewhere. And that all then just, then also impacts your mental health and your behavior as well. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and to your point, what you just said there is it accumulates, right? So if you start small. So from our audience listening, it's paying attention to the little things, the whispers, the subtleties, and doing a check, right? Check yourself with respect to where are you emotionally, where are you physically, what stresses are weighing you down, and then how what do you do then? Like how would you work with someone to help them come out of burnout?
Yeah, that is it's a long process. It's a difficult process. And in terms of like how I start to help people, I really feel like the first step is really bringing that awareness between, as a nutritionist, between what you're eating and how you're feeling, right? And so, I have people keep a sleep, love, poop journal before they come and see me.
Okay, so tell us about this. Tell us about the journal.
So basically, this sleep, love, poop journal, I ask people to keep a diary of how many hours they sleep. And I obviously keep a diary of what food they're drinking, what food they're eating, what they're drinking. And I also ask them to keep a record of how many bowel movements they have in a day.
Okay.
And I ask them to, look at their bowel movements, be able to have a conversation with me about it. And also in terms of their sleep, just jot down, how was that sleep? How did you feel when you woke up? Did you wake up in the middle of the night? Just so we can discuss how their sleep quality is as well. And the amazing thing about keeping this diary is that it's an amazing tool for reflection and mindfulness. So, first of all, everyone who hands me back the journal is like, oh my God, Cristina, I've had the worst day or the worst week, or, this isn't really what happens.
So denial is at the forefront. Okay.
But the reality is that I don't ask people to keep this food diary as a judgment tool. I ask them to keep it so that they can start to see, like, oh gosh, I had 3 glasses of water on Monday and looks like I didn't go for a poo that day or on Tuesday. And seems as though I had a lot of brain fog and, like, interesting. Like, could there be a link between that, like between my bowel movements and my quality of sleep and my mood and what I eat? And I go, yeah, there is, because when we are not literally letting go of the crap in our body, that can contribute to things like brain fog, because our gut and our brain are connected via the vagus nerve. And so when we haven't cleaned house, there's a lot of toxicity that's recirculating in the body, and that creates a lot of opportunity for inflammation. And so, yeah, our brain may not be working at its top sort of potential, yeah. And we also might be experiencing heightened anxiety or insomnia, because as it turns out, the majority of our serotonin, which is our happy hormone, and our melatonin, which is our sleep hormone, as you may know, is made in our gut. So having good gut health is inextricably linked to our mental health and our state of our mental health and our ability to stay optimistic and to let go of our stressors and to sleep and to really rest and regenerate, right? Gut health is so key. What you're eating determines your gut health, right? So that whole picture is so important to understand. So keeping a sleep, love, poop journal can really help to sort of build that reflective practice that we need to understand what food is actually showing you love, right? Like what food is actually helping you, and which one isn't, right? What's sabotaging you? What's sabotaging your performance? And there aren't many things that we do as constants in a given day, right? Like brushing our teeth might be, one of them, but eating is something that we do 3 times a day. So there's a lot of data points that can show us what really is fueling our performance and not just kind of filling our belly, right?
Right.
And so when we start to see our meal times and our food as an opportunity for recovery, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, what emotions do I tap into in order to guide my food choices and thrive, right? Not just survive.
Yeah. So
That's the second part, right? The emotion
yeah.
is the second part.
So sorry to interrupt there, but so
No.
I just where that took me was that how important it's symbolic really of the food and the sleep and our intake is symbolic of what we're putting in. If we're not releasing, so that's emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, every aspect of our whole being. If we're not aware of what we're putting in, it's very hard for us to release that, right? And so what I heard you say is that your love, sleep, poop journal is really helping create that awareness so that you're making better choices of what you're holding on to.
Yeah. And exactly. And the reason why it's a sleep, love, poop journal and not a sleep, eat journal, because so my TEDx talk is called Sleep, Love, Poop. And, my coach, she's like, why don't you just call it sleep, eat, poop? And I'm like, because no one needs any help to eat. No one needs help with that. Right. But that emotion behind our food choices, that's what's going to determine whether you're fueling your performance or whether you're filling your belly, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I really truly believe, having gone through that learning process myself, is that love is really the only emotion that's strong enough, that's ambitious enough, really, to be that guiding force, right? Because when you love someone, like when you love yourself, when you love someone, you want the best for them, right? If I think of my kids, for example, I want the best winter jacket for them. I want like the best education for them. I want like the best, what have you, piano, the best friends for them. I want them to be enjoying the best in their life. And we're so used to employing this idea of like having the best and trading up, right? All the time, right? Like, is this the best house I can live in? Is this the best career I can have? Is this the best place I can work? Is this the best car I can drive? But I like to use that concept and apply it to nutrition. Is this really the best I can do for myself at this point in time? And the reality is that, I got to a point where I was like, well, I don't want to settle for toast and coffee anymore, because that's not the best I can do, right? I need and deserve better than that if I'm going to, be a nutritional therapist and listen to my clients with empathy and with compassion, and then, finish that part of my day and transition into helping my kids with fraction homework, which drives me crazy.
Yes, of course.
and then, at the end of the day, having enough left within me to be physically and emotionally present for my partner, and to work on and invest in a relationship there that's really meaningful for me. So we're not just our career, right? We're so much more than that. And so how do we be resilient, and how do we perform, not just in our 9 to 5? And I say 9 to 5, obviously, because nobody does 9 to 5 anymore, but how do we perform and be resilient, not just in our 9 to 5, but in our relationships with our family and with our partner, with our friends, in our relationship with ourselves, right? How do we show ourselves the love and the self-worth that we deserve and and what.
Well, you've shared a lot of really great points. So when we're looking at burnout in total,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And it's bringing us back to that emotional presence. There's so many factors that I heard you share there that really do have a significant impact on us. So it's our nutrition, it's how we sleep. And I hear from women all the time, myself included, I can
Mhm.
fall asleep, but I'm waking up in the middle of the night, or I have insomnia,
Mhm.
I can't go to sleep. Sleep is a
Mhm.
huge factor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are some of those tips that you have that can help our audience take away today, some practical guidance on how we start to move from that burnout to really thriving?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, with respect to sleep in particular, there's a lot to unpack there, right? And there's a big part of it that's, sleep hygiene, of course. Um, with women, what I see with sleep is as well is that those those hours like post kids being in bed and post the kitchen getting tidy and all that, they're so precious, right? There's like a lot of like wanting to kind of draw that time out, because that's kind of like me time or time that you have with your partner or whatnot. But if those hours are getting compressed, and I'm sure that, Vicky, this is probably something that you do quite a lot in your coaching, bringing that awareness to, like, if you're not having time for yourself, who are you giving that time to? Because
Yeah.
there's always a ledger, right?
Oh, 100%. When
Yeah.
you say no to yourself,
Mhm.
you're saying yes to somebody
Yeah,
else,
always,
right?
always.
And
So
so you want to say more yeses to you and no to the others.
Exactly. But generally, when I, as a nutritionist, have a client who can't sleep, I first look at that food diary, right? To understand if they're getting the nutrients they need to make that neurotransmitter melatonin, which,
Okay.
as you know, regulates the sleep cycle.
Yes.
I also take a look at their daily intake of food to determine if they're getting enough of those nutrients to relax the muscles. So, what are the foods there that are rich in magnesium to really relax the muscles? And what is the intake of foods that's really nourishing their adrenal glands? So those glands that are responsible for making our stress hormones like cortisol, for example. And our adrenal glands are also responsible for helping us stay resilient in the face of stress, right? Because generally, if we're dealing with a case of insomnia, for example, right, we're dealing with someone who's still processing a stressor, right? Like that stress is stuck somewhere in there. And they're kind of looping it back in, be it that stressful conversation that they had, or, that's that stressful project with the uncertain outcome. They're kind of looping that in the body, or they're worried about something big. And so, of course, there are cognitive behavioral therapies, which are super useful for insomnia, more so than sleeping pills, actually. But the food that we eat also plays a very crucial role in helping you sleep, because as it turns out, most of our melatonin, as I said, it's produced in the gut. And melatonin is built in our body from the amino acids found in protein, for example. It can be animal or plant-based, either way, but they're built from the amino acids that we find in protein. And the food that we eat also impacts the ease with which our body responds to and is able to let go of stress. So, for example, people who have like higher levels of vitamin C in their body, for example, they are actually able to go from one stressful situation to another with greater ease. And so that is extremely important for women in leadership positions, because that means that we can go from that stressful client meeting to having a difficult conversation with a team member to a board presentation to something else, right? with greater ease. So when I hear people talk about, people in the corporate space, right, talk about building resilience in their teams, I think, gosh, does the future of work entail a proper lunch break so that people can
having a lunch break?
Yeah, so that people can actually fuel their resiliency, because it doesn't come from nothing, right?
That's really good. That's important to understand, because
yeah,
when you said that, I went through my menu of what did I have for dinner last night?
yeah,
right. And so really thinking about what you're putting in. Okay, awesome.
And really intentionally making time for it. Like, if we're nutritionally deficient because we don't have time for lunch, or we're burning people out to the point where they can't be bothered to make dinner because they're so tired, then, we might be talking about resilience, right? And empathy, but we're not really practicing it, right? And stress is a given, but resilience is really an intentional choice. And I really think that in the workplace, we need to start, holding space for creating those intentional choices that we need to build resilience, because it doesn't, resilience, you can't magic that up. That is an embodied practice.
Right. And so just what you said there, super important that we as individuals take responsibility for doing that for ourselves, because corporations will not always be the ones that will subscribe. So to your point, they'll say, we need to do things to help us be more resilient, but fueling yourself is really a mindful practice. And so, if it's tough to go have lunch, then pack a lunch, take it with you, or, prep it the night before and have it in the refrigerator, because a lot of us are still working from home, right? But fueling yourself with really good nutrients that help reduce the amount of the burnout that we can experience, both physically and mentally. So, Cristina, this has been awesome. And I know you're a high intention person, and, you had a journey that has brought you here today. So thank you for sharing that. Absolutely.
Yeah, my pleasure.
What would be your sage advice? Like, if you could tell our audience to take 2 things away from this conversation today to help them be less burned out or more aware, what would that be?
So, I think I really have to come back to kind of my sort of sleep, love, poop mantra for this. So I know that's kind of 3 things, but kind of in one.
That's okay. We'll have 3's good.
So really, the first thing about prioritizing sleep and recovery and really seeing that as productive me time is really important. So, sleep and making sure that you're giving the opportunity for your body to rest and regenerate and recover is so important in terms of getting on that path out of burnout and overwhelm. Super important. And love, of course, love as that sort of ambitious guiding force for the choices that you make in your life, including the food choices that we make, right? That's supremely important, because, at the end of the day, we're really conditioned to seeing chocolate as a treat and broccoli as a punishment. But when we, but you know what I mean? Like, you don't tell like your kid, like, if you're good, I'm going to give you broccoli for dinner today.
Yeah, exactly. Only if we did that. Yes.
Even I tell my kids that, and they laugh, right? They know it. So, but really sort of tapping into that sense of love and self-worth, and making that intentional choice to fuel your performance instead of just fill your belly is really, really key. And understanding, what foods can help you really do that, and what foods show you love is really important, because when you're in a state of burnout, the reality is that you don't want to, you don't want to contemplate giving anything up, right? You don't want to diet. Burnout is already a state of extreme depletion. You don't want to punish yourself anymore, right? So really that transition into love-led nourishment is really the hardest one that I make with my clients, to really start to see their food choices as a way to show themselves greater love and kindness. That's really important. And poop, right? Like we just have to let go of the crap that's holding us back. That is just that's just the cycle of, of life.
No, that's so true and so symbolic. Like as you were saying that, it's like, because I love how you said it actually, because it's letting go of the crap, right? Like if you physically can see yourself, okay, when you have that poop, you're just letting it all go. So all of that stress and strain and frustration, everything just goes and flush it away.
Yeah.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great advice. Thank you. Thank you for that so much. I'm just watching our time here, but I want to open it up for our audience because I'm sure there's some great questions. So for those of you who have joined us, feel free to, you can either raise your hand or put in the chat. If you have a question, put in the chat any questions that you would like Cristina to answer. So feel free to turn on your mics and ask away.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Hello, it's so great to see you, Vicky, again.
Good to see you too.
Yes, thank you. And hi, Cristina. This was really, really, I find educational and inspiring, as for sure, as a business coach and running a couple businesses and having 3 children. I can relate to a lot of the, burnout and the stress, what you were sharing. And I loved hearing about letting the crap or shit just go, both mentally and physically. So I love it. I might use it sometimes. So thank you for that. And you did share a couple things around the magnesium and adrenal gland. And that's definitely something, as I was working with my holistic doctor, something she recommended too, as I did have a stress attack last year. So besides those 2, what else would you say your key, maybe top 3 supplements would be to take daily, just for overall balance?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I just want to say is hello and thank you for your question. Supplementation, I get questions about supplementation a lot. And what I've really come to realize after years of clinical practice is that supplementation, first of all, it doesn't make up for nutritional deficiencies or a lack of kind of like a balanced, wholesome diet. So I just wanted to start off there because, the supplement industry is a multi-billion-dollar business. And there's lots of supplements that tout that they can, help with a great number of things, but really it is a supplement. It's something that you do on top of your nutritional practice. But in terms of supplements that I find are just kind of foundational, I would say vitamin D is foundational for immunity, especially these days, with COVID. There are a lot of studies that show that people who have optimal levels of vitamin D are more likely to have a less severe case of COVID should they contract it. So I would say that vitamin D and making sure that you stay on top of those levels is really important. I would say also that, magnesium supplementation, I find especially in the perimenopausal age is very, very important. And the other thing is that, because of the impact of stress on the digestive system, I would say that, most people, I would say, are probably better off having supplementing with a digestive enzyme so that you can really absorb the nutrients from your food, instead of taking those in through, a multivitamin, for example, because our body really isn't designed to take in nutrients through supplementation. It's designed to take them through food. So we're not just what we eat, we're what our body is able to absorb. So sometimes taking a digestive enzyme can actually do away with a lot of money spent elsewhere.
Okay.
Nice.
Amazing. Thank you so very much, Cristina.
You're welcome.
Great question, Isabella. Thanks. Okay, we probably have time for maybe one or two more questions. Anybody else want to venture into a question with Cristina?
I'm looking for the elusive unmute button.
Always hidden.
Exactly. Hello and thank you. And hi, Cristina.
Hi.
I wonder if you could spend a few minutes sharing your view on what cravings are telling us when we're in those stressful moments. Are different types of cravings or different times of day, are those hints at telling us anything, or is it all just part of the same chapter around stress and resilience and managing that?
Yeah, stress. Well, cravings can tell us a lot. There is a camp that says that sugar cravings tell us that we're looking for love, and that maybe we're looking for a hug, or something that more emotional like that. And salty cravings are stress cravings, so they're more related to kind of like work issues or things like that. But I really find that like in terms of I used to suffer really badly from like chocolate cravings. I just wanted to eat chocolate all the time. And I certainly found that when I improved my gut health, those cravings were much easier to manage. Much easier to manage. So sometimes, Vicky, you asked me about silent clues. If we're having very strong cravings for something, that could just be our gut bacteria saying to us, hey, there's a bit of an imbalance here that needs to be remedied and rectified. And I was just wondering if you could help me do that, because there's only so much chocolate we can eat without experiencing inflammation and other sort of chronic health symptoms. So sometimes, and actually, I used to get really upset with myself because I'd be like, okay, today is day one of no chocolate. I'm not having chocolate anymore for the rest of my life. And today is day one. And then by day two, I'd be like, God damn it, Cristina, why can't you just be, why can't you be stronger than this? Why can't you be stronger than this? And I'd beat myself up, and that inner critic would be like, self-flagellating me like the good Roman Catholic that I am, and it's not like your cravings are not dictated here for the most part. They're dictated by your gut. So yeah, I would say have a look at your gut health and see what's going on there.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So anybody else? We've got time for one more question before we wrap up here today.
I have something that I'd like to bring forward. There was something, Cristina, thank you so much for doing this. It's been very helpful and informative. But you said something about changing our mindset so that broccoli is good and chocolate's not. And certainly over the last 18, 19 months, I've had a real problem with that, in that as soon as I make that decision of I have to do something about this, everything's gone off the rails, I need to clean this up. As soon as I make that decision, I'm immediately sabotaging it with chocolate or opening a bottle of wine or whatever is at hand. How can we make the shift in mindset? Because it's not just mind over matter.
No, it's not just mind over matter. I mean, it is a holistic approach, because as I said, some of those cravings, they're really coming from the state of your health, from the state of your microbiome, from the state of like the bacteria in your gut. And sometimes we just can't deny it. We feel like it's a superhuman effort to deny it, but it is basically a step by step by step process. You know, I like to say to people, there is no wagon, there's just life. You don't get on the wagon and fall off the wagon. There's just life. And so what can we do in terms of setting little minor goals for us on a day-to-day basis that help us to transition our gut health in parallel with our mindset? So really, you know, Vicky knows this, but I do a love and kindness guided meditation every Friday afternoons at 2:30. And I do it for myself because I love tapping into those emotions. I really feel like they're a beacon for me in terms of the choices, helping me make the choices that I want to for myself, but also to give, you know, other people the opportunity to really carve out some time in their day to practice it. Because that's the thing, you know, when we're working, we're not, you know, we're doing the Superman pose the whole day, right? Like we're practicing performance. We're tapping into emotions that help us, you know, perform. Basically, we're not tapping into love and kindness, and that's also an intentional practice. We need to carve that time out for ourselves to really sort of intentionally connect with those feelings that can help us make choices and stick to those choices when they matter most, right? So, but if we're not practicing that with intention, it's very difficult, especially when we're under stress, to be able to make that right choice, because we're not used to tapping into that. We don't have that practice of bringing that intentionality to ourselves and really tapping into those emotions. So it's just like building like exercise. It's like the first time you go to the gym. No one's going to ask you to do a push-up the first time around, right? But slowly you kind of work your way there. I'm still working my way there.
You're building you're building muscles, right? You're building strength.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly. And it starts step by step.
Great question, Sue. Thank you. And I think all of us have suffered from that. I definitely will tell you I have, especially with the wine and the chocolate over the last 19 months. So I think we're all in that one together for sure. But yeah, beautiful. So Cristina, if I can ask you, because I had the good fortune of participating a week ago in your Friday 15-minute meditation, love and kindness practice. Maybe you could put that in the chat, the link, if you have
sure.
that handy. Yeah. That would be great, because it is a beautiful way to just be very intentional about, you know, serving yourself. And it's 15 minutes. It's not long. And she does such a beautiful job of, you know, just bringing everything together. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And if you also would, I would love it if you could put in the chat how people can connect with you, so that they know where to find you, either, you know, through your email or on Instagram, you know, all of those different channels of where they can reach out to you.
Yes. Oh goodness. Now you're asking me very difficult questions.
That's okay. I'm going to talk for
what
a minute.
My handles are. I'm looking them up.
It's okay. Even if you just do your LinkedIn or your email is great. Yeah. So I know this has been such an amazing conversation, and Cristina has brought up so many wonderful points of how we can serve ourselves better. And I just from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that, Cristina. But I also want to share that, you know, she's going to continue this conversation next week at the Women in IT Summit, who happens to be the sponsor of our podcast today. And in the summit, you're able to join professionals from across Canada's tech and diversity, equity, and inclusion space. So that's October 20th. And it's their third annual summit. And this promises to be a really impactful event, because they're offering a ton of different conversations, fireside chats, panel discussions, keynote speakers. There's also, it's going to be followed by 2 master classes, which three master classes. I'm going to be hosting one of those on how we network and connect, especially in our environment today, virtually. So if anybody would like to join me, I'd love to have you. This is a free event, but it's a great way for you to connect with other individuals. You don't have to be in the tech industry, but this is the Women in IT Summit's way of building stronger diversity, equity, and inclusion in all businesses. So we'd love to have you there. And Cristina will be amazing continuing this discussion on her panel. So please join us. And again, Cristina, I want to thank you. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for joining us today and sharing the love and the beauty that you have brought. And hopefully our audience will walk away today feeling that, that self-compassion, and that they feel really good about taking care of themselves. And that's not a selfish thing. It's actually selfless, because when we take care of ourselves and we're in the right headspace and emotional space, we can be in the right physical space. So thank you. Thank you for that. And for those of you who like following our podcast, or if you want to share this podcast with someone, these will be downloaded on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, our website. So if you know another woman who needs to hear this message today, please do share it with her, or him. It can be him too. We like men too. So just keep that in mind, and it should be downloaded over the weekend, and it'll be available at WIL Talk, Women in Leadership Talk. And lastly, our next podcast is on October the 28th. We will be hosting Nikki Self, who is the founder and president of Saponetti Inc. And this woman is a disruptor in this world. She is looking to change the conscious ecosystem of creating a zero waste environment. And we're going to be talking about ways that, how each of us as individuals can make a difference in impacting our earth and world in a very positive way. And she is a force, this woman. She's got great visions, and would love to have, all of you join us, or if you know other women who would enjoy this conversation, or men, we like men here too, please have them join us on the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. So Cristina, I thank you again. And ladies, thank you for joining us. And I hope to see you on October the 28th. Bye for now.
Thanks so much, Vicki.
Take care.
Bye-bye.